Okay, good morning, everybody. I apologize for yesterday, and hopefully it won't happen again. Let's go and discuss where we were 2 days ago. When we saw this halacha on Monday, what we were talking about is this word. It's a unique word. It doesn't appear anywhere else in halachic discussions. It's called merupia, and it's some foreign word which describes a type of business relationship between a Jew and a non-Jew, where a Jew has a client or a customer um, that's not Jewish, and that the non-Jewish customer or client is someone who is the source of this Jew's income. And we saw basically two opinions. One opinion is that it's fair game for Shimon, the second Jew, to try and lure this non-Jewish customer away from Ruvain so that he can make parnasa. And the reason why is because it's like a hefker object that, and according to one opinion, when something is totally hefker, there's no such requirement of staying away and letting the first Jew get it. However, the other opinion that we saw is that it's usser, is that if there's an established business relationship between Reuven and the non-Jew, Shimon has to stay away. Now, in order for us to understand what the basis of the machlokas is and why this may be more analogous or less analogous to cases we've seen before, I just wanted to take a look. First of all, we have to finish the Imrei Yaakov, and let's take a look. So we were up to Samach Beis, Umi Shabalafatot, that according to the second opinion, it is usher for Shimon to lure the Gentile away from Reuven. So he says, Dafka ba'ofen zeh shaha Yisrael mefatel goy. It's only usher for the Jew to, according to the second opinion, to lure and to try and influence the Gentile to give him the business instead of the first Jew. Aval im hagoy holech li Yisrael lo shayach merupia. But if the Gentile is the one who solicits Shimon to make him an offer, to see if he can save money, so then there's nothing wrong with Shimon telling him what services or what goods he can provide at a lower cost. The Isser Merupia, Hishalo Yishtadelhu Eitzel Hagoy, Avalo Im Hagoy Ba Etzlo. Because the prohibition of Merupia is only for the second Jew to try and lure away the customer. But if the customer comes to the second Jew, so then that's considered acceptable. And of course, that's a very subtle difference. As you can imagine, there would be many kinds of business situations where it's really not so clear who's the one, who's the initiator of the competition. Okay, but let's go on to the second, this next piece. Yesh komos nohagin lahakel kisvar rishana. So we saw in the Rav Shulchan Aruch that he equivocated, and he basically said everything goes according to the minhag of where you are. There are some places where they don't, where they basically tell the Jewish community that you're not supposed to do this, and in other places they allow fellow Jews to talk to the Gentiles in the community to see if keep it an open market. So he says, Ayin bi'urim, sof divrei maschal al pi savara, mashanohug shesochnim metziim b'chanuyot secharot shonot. He says, we'll take a look in the bi'urim in a second. It's a long piece, but we'll just take a look at the first part and the last part. He says that today, many times you have agents who present, or basically, put forward in stores different kinds of merchandise. Bisman shabal hachanut yesh lo kvar sochen acher kavua. When the storekeeper already has another agent. Let's say an agent comes along and he says, I see you have a store or a professional business, and I'm here to offer you a particular service, whether it's insurance, or whether it's some other service that your business might be able to benefit from. And the question is this permitted? Um, there's so many different kinds of businesses where this is where this happens, where you'll get a cold call from someone who's offering paper supplies or medical supplies or or any different kind of product. And is this considered to be encroaching when Jew number 2 knows that Jew number 1 already has the account? Okay. And if the second guy gets the account, this of course will cause a reduction in income for the first Jew. The Baal Hachanut lo yuchal limkor hakol, and or let's say an agent comes along and says, I want to purchase from I want to be a purchaser, or let's say a middleman, to sell your goods to other people. And I'll be able to do a more effective job at selling your merchandise. There's so many different permutations of this where there's an open market of competition. And invariably, when the second Jew solicits the supplier, who also is Jewish in these scenarios, it's undercutting the first Jew. So this is very similar to the case of a merupia, where you know that the first Jew already has a business relationship with the Gentile, and yet, as you'll see that I write in the Biurim, that there's reason to be lenient in this case, or there's definitely a basis for the Jew number 2 to argue that what he's doing is not in any way a contravention of halacha. So the first thing I want to do is really try to get a better handle on the parameters of this halacha. And in order to do so, let's take a look at this biurim over here. Al pi svara ha'achrona shenizbara l'mayla. He said that there is reason to be lenient if you hold that it's okay to swoop in and take something that's hefker that the first person was already prospecting over. Rotza lomar, the spirale de dafka b'sechirus o kinyan ikadin ani hamahapech b'charara, avalo behefker umitzia. In other words, this opinion would maintain that it's only with transactional items where a Jew is already in negotiations with a seller that it's usher for for Shimon to come along and try to undo those transactions or those negotiations. But when it comes to a hefker item, we saw an opinion before that there's no prohibition for the second Jew to come along and try to acquire that hefker for himself. Now, the question is, why is a transaction with a Gentile considered to be like hefker? So we had said that the reason is because the second Jew who's coming along is trying to gain future business, not current business. He's trying to gain future business, and future business is speculative. And because it's future and not past, so then it's like hefker. It's like taking something that's out there in the open, belongs to nobody, and that's the reason why it's considered to be, there's more reason to be lenient. So he says, V'hinei din zeh ita b'rama siman kufnun vav sif hei v'zeloshana. So the basis of this halacha is in the Rama, in siman kufnun vav in Choshen Mishpat, and the Rama writes as follows: Adam sheyesh lo akum merupia, lashon yarfu tal v'yarov kematar. That if Jew number 1, we'll call him Reuven, has a business relationship with a Gentile, which we call this merupia. He's already established a pattern of making money off of a particular non-Jew. Yesh mekomot shedanim she'asur la'achirim lerid l'chiyuto v'la'asokim ha'akum hahu. There are places where the convention is that we don't allow another Jew to come in and try to lure the Gentile away from Reuven. V'yesh mekomot she'ein danim. But there are other places where they don't intervene and they don't place a restriction on the open market. V'yesh matirin liYisrael acher leilech la'akom hahu lahalvot lo v'lasok imo u'lishachude le u'la'afuke minei. And there are therefore places where they say it's totally permitted for Shimon, the second Jew, to go to the Gentile directly, to offer him loans, to offer him merchandise, and to try to entice him to come and give the business to Shimon. The nichse akum heim kehefker b'chol hakodem zacha, and the reason is because the assets of a non-Jew are like hefker. Now, why is that true only by a Gentile? Why don't you say the assets of a Jew are like hefker? V'yesh osrim, and there are those who prohibit ad kan l'shono, and that's the statement of the Ramah. Now, we have to try and understand from the Ramah what is this based on, and why is there this distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew? So he writes, "Umakor divrei haramahu b'mordechai b'vabasra chaf aleph u'bira maharshal divarav." So the source of what the Ramah writes is found in a commentary called the Mordechai, who's a Rishon, he's an early commentator, and the Maharshal, who's a later commentary, explains what the Mordechai means. Dahoel v'ha'akum gavri almininhu ein ha'Yisrael somech alav. And the idea here is as follows. In the medieval world, in the Middle Ages, a Jew being successful in doing business with a non-Jew was considered something that was very speculative, because since Gentiles have the upper hand and they look at the Jew as a second-class citizen to be exploited, it is therefore, there's never any guarantee that you can maintain a business relationship with a non-Jew, because the non-Jew could say at any time, Jew, I've been doing business with you because it's been convenient with me, but now I've decided to go somewhere else. He doesn't have to offer an explanation. He doesn't feel bad. And therefore, it's extremely speculative and insecure, this business relationship that Jews have with non-Jews. That was the prevailing attitude in the Middle Ages. And as such, ve'ein lo shum bitachon al hamerupia. And therefore, the Jew doesn't have any reliance that is, that has real basis on this business relationship, because he knows that at any kind of whim that the non-Jew has, he could always choose to leave the business, the association, the connection with this Jew. He doesn't have to provide a reason. The Jew has no legal recourse. The Jew has no rights, and therefore, the Jew has no real sense of reliance on this being a long-lasting business relationship. And it was on that basis that there's reason for another Jew to come in and try to get that business, because it's not like a hefker item, like the fisherman who set up his nets. There's a strong reliance when he puts out the bait that his nets are going to catch the fish that are from hefker. But in this kind of situation, there's no real reliance that the first Jew has that he's going to be able to maintain this business for any extended period of time. V'lo hava ka'atia liyadei kevar. And therefore, it's not like the Jew can say, well, I have a solid, in with this Gentile, and you can't take my future business away from me because it's as if I've already got it in the bag. V'chol shaita v'shaita havalei kezocha min ha'hefker. And therefore, every new business transaction is like hefker. It's like getting it anew, because you can't rely on past history with in the way that Jews and non-Jews interact with each other. And therefore, Rabbeinu Tam bodin oni mahapech. So, and like Rabbeinu Tam says, that when you're dealing with hefker items where no one has a claim on it, there's no such law of there being a breach of ethics to go in and swoop and take it away. Because of Alzeh, Bishut Chasam Sofer Choshen Mishpat Siman Ayin Tes, he says, now the Chasam Sofer, who's from the 19th century, early 19th century, is very disturbed with this. He says, V'tzarech li'iyun, Teinach gabi Yisrael Rishon havelei ki'ilu adayin lo aser liyadeh. Mikol makom gabi Yisrael sheni shebo lahasig v'lo einenu kehefker. He says, I don't understand, says the Chasam Sofer. I understand that when it comes to the first Jew, you're saying that there's no real reliance on the future business of this Gentile. But with the second Jew, it's not any better. He says, because the second Jew is going to have to invest a lot of effort in trying to lure the Gentile away. And there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to get any business from the Gentile, because maybe the Gentile will blow off the second Jew. ואם כן, מה לא להשתדל אצל נחרי זה להפסיד מציאתו של זה, אבל להשתדל אצל אחר, בצורך עיון עד כאן לשון. And so the Chassam Sofer is bothered with the fact that why don't we tell, just like by the case of Ani Hamahapich B'Charara, where a poor man is prospecting on a garbage heap. So the Gemara says, we tell anyone else who would like to get dibs on that garbage heap, there's another garbage heap down the road. Just go down the road and you'll find another garbage heap. Why take away the item that the first poor person has been prospecting over? And so the Chassam Sofer says, it's one thing to say that the first Jew has no real reliance on this business association, then the second Jew can come along and swoop in. But if the second Jew has no greater reliance on that business association, it's an equal playing field. So why then don't we tell the second Jew, instead of swooping in and trying to take away this guy's efforts that he's worked so hard on developing this relationship, on cultivating a relationship with this Gentile, why don't you find a different Gentile and cultivate a relationship with him instead? And that's what bothers the Chassam Sofer about this. He basically is saying it doesn't seem fair that even though the first Jew, yes, it's true, the non-Jew could blow him off at any time, but the first Jew has put in a lot of effort to try to maintain this relationship. He sends gifts to the Gentile, sends him a fruit basket once in a while, and all those things like that. It doesn't seem fair to the Chassam Sofer for the second Jew to be able to come along and try to destroy that kind of connection. So in order to try and resolve these two opposing perspectives on this issue, Rav Stern suggests as follows. He says, Ulanias daiti nira. It would seem to me that I can answer this question. He says, let me suggest why the situation with engaging with the Gentile is unlike a case of a poor man prospecting on a garbage heap. Because in the Talmud's example, the poor man is prospecting over a specific finite item that is clear and present in front of us. Which is either this pile of garbage or a specific item of merchandise that he wishes to purchase from a vendor. The difference that makes this circumstance unique is that the second Jew is not trying to disrupt the business and the merchandise that the Jew has already acquired from the Gentile in the past. He's trying to talk about what will be in the future. Currently, there's no merchandise in front of us. Currently, there's nothing of value in front of us. The second Jew is merely trying to create a relationship with the Gentile in the hope of getting future business from him. So it's a non-tangible that the second Jew is trying to take away from the first Jew. The future business, which is not yet present and distinct and discrete right here in front of us. He's not trying to undo any previous agreements or transactions that Ruvain made with the Gentile. And that's the reason why the argument goes, according to those poskim who are more lenient, that the second Jew is not doing anything wrong by trying to lure the Gentile to give him future business. That's the argument. And as you can see, there's really two sides of looking at this. On the one hand, the Jew has an established relationship. He has a certain level of reliance on the Gentile to provide him with parnasa. But on the other hand, the future business is a non-tangible. It's not here in front of us. It's ethereal in a sense, because we don't know what future business the Gentile is going to be able to do. There's not the same level of reliance because there's nothing here in front of us. And the non-Jew is ephemeral. It's a business. In the business world, I'm just looking for the best price. And there's no sense of loyalty in the case in the relationship between a non-Jew and a Jew. And therefore, it's fair game for the second Jew to come along and try to get that Gentile's business. We're going to skip. So now that you see this ambiguity, this gray area, let's skip down to where the Rav Stern basically says that based upon everything that we've discussed up until now, it would turn out that in modern times, where business standards and transactional standards and the entire culture of the business world has changed to the point where, number one, Jews are no longer second-class citizens in the business world. But number two, in many industries, there is no sense of loyalty between a vendor and a customer, and between an agent and a customer. And in many types of industries, it's just, I'm here to get the best price. And if you can offer me a better price because you can get the goods in from China and this guy has to produce them locally, then I'm happy to give you the business because I'm interested in the same thing that you are. You want parnasa, I want parnasa. And it's completely business. And it's really just the bottom line is just who can give me the best price. I'm not interested in going out to dinner with you. I'm not interested in having a long-term relationship with you. But if you can give me better service, better goods, better price, that's the bottom line. And so in that kind of industry, and there are certain industries where loyalty is still valued, right? And relationships are still valued, but they're becoming more and more rare. I'll give you an example. I purchased auto insurance from a guy who's an older man. He's a religious Christian. He happens to be married to a woman who was born Jewish, and he has made the niche of his business to sell auto insurance to clergy, right? And so he called me even before we moved out to Canada, because I was purchasing a car, or leasing a car, I should say, and I was introduced to him, and I got to know him by schmoozing with him on the phone. And he's got a smaller company that probably has difficulty competing with one of these large auto insurance companies, but he's a good guy to schmooze with. I respect his work ethic. I think he's a decent person, and he talks about family, and he talks about going over to his wife's cousins one time for Passover and having a brisket. He's a good schmoozer. So there are certain situations where you develop a relationship with a vendor, and that is what keeps the loyalty in the relationship. But those kinds of business relationships are becoming more and more uncommon in many different industries, especially if, let's say, I run an office, I run a professional office, I'm a doctor, I run a medical office, or I'm a lawyer and I run a law firm. Or I run a business where I'm a manufacturer, and a guy walks into the door, cold call, with his briefcase or his little laptop, and he wants to show me his new merchandise. So yes, it's true, I may have been purchasing certain supplies or services from another person, But he comes along and shows me, look, this new technology, this new product, this new thing, your old supplier, he doesn't really have the latest things. And the world is constantly changing under our feet. And those kinds of loyalty issues don't exist as much anymore. So based on that, Reb Stern writes as follows. He says, let me just find the place. He says, Al kol panim, if everyone can see my cursor. Lefi divrei ha-maharshal de le'el, based on what the Maharshal wrote, shekosav, Dehol ve'ein ha-Yisrael somechu betech al ha'akum lo havi ka'atya liyadeh, that since the Jew has very little reliance on future business from the Gentile, then there's nothing wrong with the second Jew coming along and trying to lure the Gentile away. V'havi kehefker, v'chol shaita b'shaita havi zechia kadasha. And therefore, it's not like there's a certain sense of assuredness of future business for Ruvain. And therefore, Shimon can, according to this perspective, can fairly argue that it's not like you have it in the bag. It's not like it's guaranteed that you have his business. So I have as much right to prospect over this hefker item, meaning the future business of the Gentile, as you do. He says, therefore, there is basis for us to be malamed zchus. To be malamed zchus means to sort of defend, or to at least offer an argument in defense of a very common practice. Sha'adam osek im socher o chevra mesuyemet kagon bituach. That a person has an established pattern of working with a particular vendor or company, such as an insurance company, o sherutim leminehem, or different professional services. Ula'achar zman ba socher o chevra chadasha. And then after a certain amount of time, a new vendor or a new company comes along, umitzia et sheruteha b'tanaim acherim, and presents its services with better terms, better conditions. Okay, umishachniim et habe'alim lahafsik la'avorim harishon, and they influence and convince the consumer to go with the new company instead of the original company. You should buy our insurance. We'll offer you a better rate. We're more competitive, and you should go with us. Now, this could be all with Jews, and Reb Stern says this half the time. Now, how do we defend this practice? This is not dealing with the Gentile in the Middle Ages, where everything was very speculative. This is dealing with fellow Jews. He says, "V'yesh bashuk ba'anafim elu tacharut bein hasochrim v'hachevrot." And in the open market, there's a lot of competition between the different companies and the different, agents and so forth. Ulefi svarat ha'maharshal yesh makom limud zchut al otam shenohagim lahakel bazeh. But based on the argument the Maharshal gave above, there is a reason why we can defend this practice. Mishum da'av sha'avar kvar zman rav me'it she'itchil la'asok im ha'chevra ha'rishona, because even though there's been a long-standing business relationship between the consumer of the goods or the insurance or the services and the first company, mikol makom einim betuchim usmuchim al zeh. But everyone knows that your product is not guaranteed to be sold to this one consumer, because everyone knows that the consumer is always looking to get the best deal, always looking to save money. Okay, shaharei yodim de b'chol yom alul hadavar liyishtanot. Every company knows that there's no such thing as a guaranteed customer. It never works that way. And everyone knows that a consumer of goods or of services can always at a whim change his mind, because there's so much competition out there. And there's so many other companies that are competing for the same business. And therefore, even though we're all dealing with Jews, nonetheless, you can view this as like the relationship that the Jew had with the Gentile in the Middle Ages, where everything was so speculative, because you never know when the Gentile is going to decide to, at a whim, do business with someone else or take his business elsewhere. Shaharei b'mitziut ein lo bitachon usmichut da'at. Because the truth is, there is no reliance that the first company has that the guy's going to continue patronizing their business. The yodim shebechol yom alul hadavar lihishtanot, because they know that every day the business might, everything is subject to change. Okay, and then we'll finish this halacha Mirz Hashem tomorrow, and we'll just discuss it a little bit more. Any comments anyone wants to make? Questions?
Rabbi, I just had a question, because the last few days we haven't had a chance to have any questions, and I wanted to circle back quickly to the situation where we were talking about the charismatic Rav in the yeshiva who takes away the students and starts a new yeshiva. So I just want to give us a quick scenario here of years ago, before you arrived in Toronto, there was a situation where there was a shul here with let's say 220 members, and then there was a satellite shul for Shabbos for some of those people who live farther away from the shul. So what happened is one of the rabbis with the shul who was running the satellite shul, he had differences with the rabbis of the main shul, and then split off and took all those satellite people away from the main shul, which caused tremendous distress for the main shul. And so my question is so the rabbi from the satellite shul and the rabbi of the main shul both were consulting with the rabbeim of the city here to get their, how to deal with all this. But it put a tremendous, I don't know, there was some machlochet and everything going on here. And it really hurt the main shul, because they lost a lot of people, and it was hard to survive. So first of all, the rabbis of the city here, did they have a responsibility not to let this happen? And secondly, the people who were the members of the main shul, should they have gone off to the satellite shul?
Oh boy. Okay. So these are good questions. These are all good questions.
Maybe we can leave it till tomorrow, because it's getting late here.
Maybe we ought to leave it until tomorrow. Let me think about how to respond to that question. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Ron.